told you that I have 4 special guests with us. And as you can see, I do. You already can tell they're special just by looking at them. But let me tell you what we're going to talk about today on the Adrienne Ross Show. These 4 gentlemen are single. And let me tell you, if you follow the Adrienne Ross Show, you know that I recently did an episode in which I talked to single Christian women, and we had quite the conversation. Now, I had already been thinking that it would be a good idea to talk to some single men as well and to get their perspective. But then when someone said to me, hey, why don't you get some single guys' perspective? I thought, absolutely. Here's the dilemma. I don't know hardly any single guys, right? And so we almost didn't have this show because I honestly had a hard time finding single men, you know? And I'm kind of in an interesting position because I'm single. I am, as you guys already know, you know, if you follow the show, you know, I've never been married. I'm single, and I don't know hardly not only any single men, but hardly even any single women. Most of the people that I communicate with are married, you know? So I'm in an interesting position because here I am talking about singleness as the only woman on here, 2 guys. And so I'm a bit out of my comfort zone, but that's a good place to be because I have a feeling that some of these guys are out of their comfort zone also. So this is what I was looking for. I was looking for guys who are Christians, who are committed to church, to their church, and who are obviously single and who desire to be married. We understand that you can be single and have no desire to be married at all. And that's absolutely legitimate, but that's a show for another day. I specifically wanted to talk to some men who want to be married. And so I'm going to just turn this over to my guests to introduce themselves so that we know a little bit about these guys as we jump into our conversation. So can I get one of you to start by telling us a little bit something about yourself?
My name's Justin Riggs. I'm 37 years old. I work Tyson forklift operator in the freezer. Also very committed to my church. I've been here for going on 5 years now, working on the 5th year. So, you know, I'm very excited about this.
Excellent. Would you start us? So I think you said it took a while for the audio to pick up. Would you start again with your name? And I think you said your age.
Yeah, my name is Justin Riggs, and I'm about to be 38 years old, 7 now currently. And like I said, work at Tyson Foods and shipping department as a forklift operator.
All right. Okay.
My name is Mark. I'm 52 years old. I'm an operations manager for a large contractor in the area, and I've been active in church for many years. Have served in a couple of different roles within the church, and just thrilled to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Glad you're here.
And I'm Jerry Lynn. I'm 53. Do some car sales. Also dabble in some real estate. Actively in church, go on mission trips, and been with my church about 23 years now.
And my name is Gabe. I am 28. I am a worship and missions director at a church in New Jersey. Just moved, was at another church for a number of years, and just recently I've just hit the 6-month mark, and I'm absolutely loving it. We're on the outskirts of New York City. And super just thankful to be where God has me right now.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Gabe, I'm from New York. Actually.
Oh, right on.
And, yeah. And so, and I've been here in Southeast Missouri for several years now, going on 10 years. I cannot believe how long it's been. I still can't get around without a GPS.
Awesome.
But but it is awesome to be where God puts you. Amen. And speaking of that, again, you guys are single. I'm not even going to start slowly. I'm going to jump right in. I want to talk about singleness within the church, but I also want to talk about just some general ideas and just hear from some guys, right? So jumping right in, not slowly, not softly, okay? On a scale of 1 to 10, you guys say you'd like to be married. On a scale of 1 to 10, where are you as far as the desire to be married? 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest, and anybody can just jump in.
I think I'm gonna say I'm a 10. It's something I've been praying about for years and waiting on. I'm actually got very close. Was actually engaged, and of course it fell through. And of course that become painful. But I mean, at the same time, you got to also understand God's timing and God's will and God's perfect plan. And so that's just it's. I think it's something that most guys, we want that wife, we want that helpmate, and the Bible says it's not good for man to be alone. So I can definitely account to that.
Okay. So you said 10.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. 1 to 10, guys.
I think I would say maybe in the past it's been higher, but I would say currently I'm probably 6, 7.
Mhm.
I think that the Lord has really put me in a spot where he's asked me some hard questions, but like good questions, not the bad kind of hard. And like one of them has recently been like, the longest time I've been like, God, it says like, if you seek first the kingdom, he'll give you the desires of your heart. And so being 28 and like, this is my second full-time ministry job. I've been like, Lord, I'm doing this, you know what I mean? And so we're seeking your kingdom, and he's been like challenged me like, yeah, but are you seeking it first? And there was moments where maybe I wasn't. And so with that, I feel like now I'm in this place where maybe it was a 9, maybe it was a 10. And so now I'm in the learning to love being where God has me. And so right now I would say probably like a 6 or 7 would be that lane, the current lane
Okay.
at, on March 16th, 2023.
Yes. Subject to change, right?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I think for me, I've been at both ends of the scale. I've been the absolute 10, couldn't wait to be married, wanted to be married, and then have actually been down to the low of quite frankly, 0. That, things were not where they needed to be, was not the healthy point that it should be, not moving in the direction that was intended. I think if I'm very candid with you at the moment, God says it's not good for man to be alone, and I am not a good loner. I do not like being alone, but I'm at a point where it's like I want that healthy relationship. I want what God intends for us to have. That's His creation purpose, right?
Right.
But I'm not at a point where I'm willing to jump in at the 10 level again until I know for sure, first of all, where I am as an individual. That am I healthy enough, spiritually, physically, mentally, financially, all the things to be able to add to that relationship. And so for me, it is absolutely my intention that I will not spend the rest of my life alone. I'm hoping that that's God's will for me as well. But it is my desire to enter into that covenant relationship and that marriage again, in His way, in His time.
Mhm.
So I've got the spectrum covered, guys. Sorry.
Okay. So you said again, so that means you've been down the road before.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Something else you said, I'm going to make sure I get back to it right after Jerry talks to us about 1 to 10.
I think currently I'm still about an 8. I felt like maybe a few months ago I wanted to go like a 10. But again, I'm in that place too where I'm trying to listen to God and find out which direction to go. And again, I don't want to be alone. I want to be married again. So right now it's just listen to His voice and know when to move in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Okay, listening to His voice. That's good. I want to jump back to something that Mark said, because he said, I don't do well alone. And I want to be married. I want God's intent, however. So I have to ask this. I asked this of the ladies also. Maybe this is a theological question. I don't know. But I'm going to ask it. There are people who say, if you desire to be married, then it's God who put that desire in you. Therefore, it's God's will. There are other people who say, not necessarily so. And God may not necessarily have the desire for you to get married just because you feel like you want to be married. Where do you stand on that?
What a question.
I mean, just because you want to be married, do you deem that this is a God thing? He's given me that desire. Or I really don't know. It's possible that it's not God's will.
I've kind of been there where when I was married the first time, I really didn't follow what God said to do. So you can get sidetracked and do what you want to do. So again, I think though all systems will go, you'll feel it. Not only you'll feel it in your heart, you'll feel it in your mind. You'll have 100% peace about it when you know it's right.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's interesting about that too is, I don't know that every single thing that I desire comes from the Lord. Right. So it's hard to say that like a desire of mine directly automatically comes from God. However, like we're talking about, like, it's in scripture. We see the intent of like marriage and that companionship and that friendship. And I really do think that, God uses that to really help fill some areas, right, of support that is needed. And so, I've never actually heard anybody ask that before. That's such a good question. Mm-hmm. But I think my initial like gut would say like all the things I know, like I know that the intention is for marriage to be something that is God honoring and to help fill, and help support throughout a lifetime. And, I don't even know if that's to say that maybe that support can come maybe not that support, but that similar type of support can't come from other areas, right? Like family and friends and meaningful relationships. And so, I don't know. That's unique. That's that's my gut. That's like my gut feeling, but I know it's not as clear and direct as like yes or no, but that's kind of where I would land.
Yeah. I think that's such an important question. Now, one thing I did not say to you guys is that I did singles ministry for years. It's been years now, but I did singles ministry for years. And so I've had a lot of conversations with single women, and that's something, when a woman wants to be married, that's something that she's got to think about, especially as time is ticking. I mean, and even here, Gabe, I think you're the youngest, right? Did you say almost 28?
Yeah, 28.
Okay, 28. But even that, in my mind, when I mapped out my life, I was going to be married by the time I was 21, 22, done with college. I was going to get married. Right. Yeah. And none of it happened yet, I guess. I mean, I'm 52. Some people would say hang it up, right? And whatever. I mean, whatever God's will is, really, I'm fine with. But I think that's value. That's I'm trying to find the right word. That's a valid question, because there are people who just say, oh no, God's going to give it to you. That's just what I want. And then there's some people who are like, I don't know. Are you willing to accept it if that's not what he wants?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a thing. No, especially, particularly in the last couple of months, the big question that God has been asking me is, do you trust me with the desires of your heart? And like, that's been a hard question, like, to answer, because there's so many moments where I'm like, back to the scripture, like, it's like so quick to quote him to himself, right? Of like, if you seek the kingdom first, like, then you'll get the desires of your heart, right? Or I will give you the desires of your heart. And so in so many moments, I'm like, okay, God, I'm seeking your kingdom. He's like, but is it first? And I'm like, okay, we're first now. Like, you're first now. And then he's like, yeah, but do you trust me with the desires of your heart? And that's like a whole nother level that the Lord's had to, and even still, like, I feel like January was like the time, like, you know what, God, I really do trust you with that. But man, like, wrestling months and months after of like, God, if it doesn't happen this way or in this time, then like, it's either I've missed your will or your will isn't good enough. And I think we've gotten to that point now where it's like, you know what, God, like how you have it, how you want it, if you want it is good. And I'm fine with it.
It does all come down to trust, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because
I-
yeah, go ahead.
I love the thought there, and to take it a step further, where we have this destination in mind. It's the relationship, it's the marriage, and one of the key points with God, with our relationship with Him, He's got a plan for us. He's got a desire for us, but He's more interested in the person we're becoming on that journey than so much as arriving at that particular destination, right? So a lot of times it's in that work of the journey there that we are to walk at the time and move in His time. He's got a time and a point and a place.
Yeah,
we often have to catch up to it.
That's true. When I hear time, I kind of smile, because for me and my story, you're going back probably close to 30 years when I received my first prophecy about marriage. I'm just kind of minding my business, right? And there were many, there were many prophecies along the way. And there's been a whole journey that the audience has heard before, where I was bitter and I was, angry, and I'm like, please, no more prophecies. I don't even want to hear it. I don't even, and then I reached, time I was miserable. And then I reached a place where I was so caught up in my purpose, even to this point where it's just like, I couldn't even imagine myself married, because it's sort of like, if it happens, it happens. I'm just doing the will of God. I'm just content now. Can't even imagine. And then the Lord started messing with me again. So I don't really know where all that leads, but that time factor can be a source of concern. But I got to ask you guys though, because I want to know why are you single though? And I know single means I'm married. Some of you may be dating or whatever, but I mean, why? A lot of times with women, I mean, the guy is the aggressor. He's the one he's the pursuer, right? And there are not very many single guys. There are more single women. So generally, we tend to think, well, the ball is in your court. So what's your story? If you want to be married, why aren't you married?
I think a lot of it on my end has to do with, I guess you say timing, waiting on God's timing. Because here's the thing, like, I think this was also kind of mentioned on one of the videos I watched, well, it just left me.
That happens.
It does. Well, and then you can't just marry just anybody, especially if you've got a call of God on your life. You have to have that person that's running right beside you, because like one thing I've noticed, as far as I even had a guy that I work with that, he doesn't live for God. He believes, but he doesn't live. And he said, it's kind of tough on you guys as believers. He said, because, in a lot of them that he's seen, he said, if you don't drink, if you don't smoke, if you don't go out to the club, don't party, then they don't want nothing to do with you. And so it's it's hard finding somebody to run that race with you. And there's also times where, like, because I thought about this also, is we was talking about the journey earlier. What journey are you supposed to be on before you hit that role of finally getting married? What are you supposed to be learning in that journey to also help somebody else that's going to be on this same journey later on? Because I went to a church, and this guy, he was a board member, and he was like, I think he was just this probably been about 10 years ago. He was just turning 45 years old and just now finally finding his wife. And so it's like, what was his journey before that? And I thought to myself, I said, please don't let me be that guy. Well, it's right now I'm about to be 30, so I'm kind of on that same path. But at the same time, I've also seen a lot of rewards with being to myself, but at the same time, it's the deal of also knowing the struggles of not having that wife and not having that helpmate to carry along. So
Yeah.
just being on his timing is very important, but it's definitely something that needs I feel like in my life needs to happen, but of course, as God's willing,
Yes, sure. Yeah. Anybody else on that?
Yeah, I just think I'm picky. Like, like there's not like a flat, like there's not a super sophisticated answer other than I don't dislike being single enough to risk messing something up because I like skipped over a process of like making sure that it was right. And so I think, and part of my story is 7 years ago, I lost my mom. And so that grief process really took there was a journey there of year after year of rebuilding, letting God kind of work on my heart. And that was a really tricky time to figure out how do I get put back together again before even and that wasn't even like in a romantic sense. That was just purely in a dealing with loss and grief and just the love of like a family member and all those things. And so I think in many ways that sort of delayed some of the preparation to be open into something like that. And so like with that in mind, it grew me up really quick. Like I was like 20 years old, had one parent. And at that point I was like, okay, when you're so close to something like that, at that moment, you're like, your frame for everything kind of changes.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? Like, I know a few things. I know the Lord's got me and I know that he'll always have me. And like, he knows what I want. Like he knows the desire. I don't, before I even say it, he knows. And so, I happen to just be maybe personality is like super particular. And so all that to say, I think I'm just picky. Like I really do. And, I trust that maybe one day that'll be a good thing. But for now it's just, maybe that's a reason. Maybe it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And we said that as women too, when we talk, say the same thing.
Yeah.
Somebody else. All right, Mark, what about you? Why are you still single?
Still going through the process. I mean, from where I was and where I want to be. I say that, I've been single here for a couple of years, and it's going through that process of healing. It's going through that process of, again, making sure that I'm in the right place spiritually, emotionally, mentally, financially. What is it that I have to do to be able to come in and add to a relationship, to bring something to the relationship and be a solid contributor to that versus, all the stuff that comes with that I still have to process through. So,
Yeah.
he's still working on me. Right. And I'm trying to do my best as well. And looking, as I walk through that, I'll know when it's the right time. I'll know. He knows what I need more than I know what I want. Right. And so I have to put myself in that place where I surrender and say, God, you know what I need. We have our desires, we have our wants, we have, we've got our script that we'll write out of, what that helpmate looks like and all the components of, but he knows what we need. He knows where he wants to take us. What is that companion that comes alongside of us and takes us to that point?
Right.
Yeah. I'm tickled because something you said took me back. Years ago, I knew someone who he had an issue with giving his heart to the Lord. And he told me this. He had been my background is in education. I taught for nearly 2 decades in New York. and he had been a student, an older student in the high school. I taught in the junior high school, but anyway, I knew he was. And one day my church was having something in the park, and I remember running into him, and he had this issue with giving his heart to the Lord because he wanted to be married at some point, and he just knew the Lord was going to give him an ugly wife. And this was for real for him. Like, he wanted to make sure he had picked his own wife and stuff before he came to the Lord, because he didn't want one of them ugly women. I don't know what that's all about, but I've heard of many reasons people didn't come to Jesus, but I think that, like, that's the top. That's the top one right there. I'm telling you. Kind of.
Right.
Jerry, what about you?
Well, like I said, I'm currently dating right now, and again, I don't know if it's logistics reasons. We're about an hour and 15 minutes apart. Again, I just want to make sure, because I don't want to go through a marriage and go through another divorce. That's the last thing I want to do. I just want to make sure it's right. I want to make sure that I am listening to the Lord on this one, and as she is as well. Again, she has to be a Christian woman. And values have to be up there with the Lord's. And again, like a lot of these guys said, everybody needs to be running along with you. And that's really key right now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's good. That's good to hear. Let's talk about the church. Okay. And I'm going to ask you to think about your local church. What would you say is the best thing that your church does in terms of ministering to singles? And see, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation, not to bash the church at all, but that there's a conversation that needs to be had along these lines. So no one had anything to say just yet for that, but so let me rephrase things. Does the church have a responsibility to minister to singles as singles, or is it just, hey, you get ministered to, the word is just for everybody, and you receive as everybody else does? Or should there be a specific direction, ministry, something where singleness is concerned?
I'll go first on this one. I believe our church, I think they start very young with our remix young adults. I think they try to get them on that platform of the morals, and then bringing these single people how to raise them up right to find their mate. So I feel like they are doing that part. But as far as just being single and life groups and stuff like that, I don't see that. There's a need for it, I think. Because I think a lot of people think, there's single women that feel like they're left alone. I think the single guys, I think we feel like we're left alone. Again, I have a lot of married friends too, so I'm kind of like the odd person out a lot of times.
Yeah.
I'll jump in here for a minute. So I love my local church, and I think
You go to the same church, by the way.
Yeah, I was throwing a plug in there for it.
Yes.
The reality is this: the church is there to minister to all of those that walk through the door. Okay, and I think there are some churches that do, specific targeted programs for specific groups within the church. I mean, everything from, seniors to the youth, and, women's groups, men's groups, all through that. There are some churches that have a very vibrant singles ministry. But I'll say this, it really should be about ministering to those that walk through the door first and foremost. That's the responsibility of the church, right?
Yeah.
It's the same as like when I take the children to Sunday school or to youth group, the church is not their primary teacher, right? I should have a direct role in that. But the church is where it goes to supplement for them to be fed and taught. And that's where the individual as well. I think some churches do a good job with singles ministry, but singles ministry can be difficult. You have to be deliberate in it, right? I mean, it's kind of one of those that, you know, for a married couple to lead a singles ministry in the church is difficult. You know, some of the issues are different. For a single person to come in and try to lead a singles ministry within the church brings about a lot of responsibility with that, but brings a lot of opportunities for things to go sideways.
Really?
Would be how I'd want to say it. Well, there's a couple of things that happen.
Well, because I did singles ministry for a while as a single person, obviously, but I'm curious. What do you mean by sideways?
Well, so sometimes a singles ministry in a church can turn into, you know, something where is it the dating game, right? Are you going to the singles ministry to try to find your match in this group, right? You know, everybody's there. Are we shopping? You know,
I've never experienced that.
You know, or does it turn into something where, you know, it builds relationships, but what are those relationships? And unless it's done deliberately in such a manner of the understanding is had within that group that this is about ministering to this individual. It's not about trying to build, you know, couples out of it.
Absolutely.
It's actually ministering to the individual heart first and foremost.
Sure.
So it takes somebody with a deliberate passion, understanding, and desire to see those ministered to in that way.
But isn't that true of every ministry? Isn't that true of the youth ministry? Isn't that true of the men's ministry if you have one? I mean, that you have to be deliberate in the intent that you're there, right? So I mean, I think that's the case for everything. I don't know why that would make single any different. I mean, I guess I get you if you're just trying to hook people up, you know, but I think there's more to singles to ministry. And I don't even mean just a separate singles ministry on the side. I mean, you go into a sanctuary of any church and you can hear about marriage and children all day long. You don't have, it's not like, let's go in the back room, let's talk about marriage. It's just there. But I mean, is that the case with singles? Do we do that with them, or do they sit there and feel left out at times?
Yeah, I think even to Mark's point, I think there's like and I don't know if this is true everywhere, but at least growing up where I grew up, pretty large church, not where I'm at now, different church, but there was always kind of like a stigma, and I was young, so I was like 13, 14. That singles ministry was kind of like the odd thing out of like hey, this is like the place where anybody who's kind of looking goes, right? And that I think in itself kind of created, I don't know if that's everywhere. That's just like where I was. So that's not a generalization. That's just a case study. But what was unique about that is, although the intent of every ministry is to minister to the people who qualify under that umbrella of like why we're doing this, if it's men, if it's women, if it's youth, if it's adults, singles ministry seemed to be like the one that had like an invisible wall of like there is a alternative motive behind the scenes, like as if it was the church's job to kind of like match make, right? And that's not the case everywhere.
Oh yeah, sure. No, I hear you.
Not the case everywhere. But what I do think is interesting too, something I don't know who mentioned it, but even thinking about singles ministry, and our church doesn't really have like a specific track for that. But what's interesting too is like you've even kind of got me thinking in my head, like, is singles ministry in that sense, like ministering to a single man or a single woman, is that even possible to do it super effectively for each individual man and woman together? Or is that something that kind of needs to be addressed, like, because the emotional needs and the stability needs kind of each one are different, similar but different? And I almost wonder if sometimes that stigma comes from we kind of plunge into like an emotional state of talking about something that's very near and dear to a bunch of people who don't have that thing at the same time, and kind of leaves maybe moments where you can't directly address it because you're kind of in that group setting. And honestly, and you would probably know more than all of us because you ran that like area and you were like in charge of that. But it even has like my head kind of turning. I'm like, I wonder even what that looks like, you know?
That's really interesting. Jerry, were you gonna say something just now?
I think what Mark and Gabe just said is maybe if you have a single men's ministry and then a single women's ministry, that way you get the idea of maybe are we shopping for people in the group? I mean, and then it could be deliberate to a woman and be deliberate to a man. And you could minister to them that way is what I'm thinking. There is a need for it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I can see the awkwardness as far as having a so-called class, but I can also see the need of, because there's times where I've had questions or I've thought of certain things and I really didn't want to hear about anything from somebody that was married. I wanted to hear about it from somebody who had the experience of, hey, I'm still single also, so this is how I'm having to get through on this right here. And I mean, because there's certain thoughts that come to my mind as far as on, on the dating situation, why am I still single, or just other different types of stuff that going into the dating part of it, that it's something I could probably take more better care of from somebody who has lived that or living, not saying that they have to be currently single, but have lived that lifestyle long as I have, as far as being single, and to where they can give me the advice that I need as far as even, I'm not saying like I'm old, but I'm like, I'm not getting no younger.
Yeah, none of us is, right? Well, many years ago, right out of college, I was in an organization that held singles conferences, and they were the most powerful, worshipful experiences. It wasn't about hooking people up, it was just like you have women's conferences and men's conferences. These people happen to be single. Some of them probably didn't want to get married. It wasn't just about getting married. And so I ask about the role of the church because I think one of the things I've observed and experienced is that within the church, because there's so much of a focus on marriage and the family, which there should be, I completely honor and respect marriage. Yes. But there's a lot, so there's so much focus on that there's not the focus on how to live single. And even when you talk about singleness, often you only talk about it in regards to being married. And even though that's why, I asked specifically for this particular conversation, but in general, a lot of times if you mention singles, you're mentioning in terms of getting married. And so I have found, at least with the women I talk to, is that very often there's they're not happy. They're dissatisfied. They feel like they're missing out because the whole role that you hear within the church is marriage. And so you're not there. And so you don't measure up yet. You haven't arrived yet, and then when we start to get older, it becomes even more of a thing because if they mention singles, it's mentioned like, you're single, so, you can attend, unto the Lord without distraction. You don't have any responsibilities, so you should be all in with the Lord. Meanwhile, I'm 52. I got plenty of responsibilities. Other people are, everybody's situation is different, and so we kind of relegate singles to a certain place. Yeah. And I have found that it has made it more difficult for people to walk in victory in their singleness because of the way that it is addressed or presented or ignored, And so I don't know, maybe that's more noticeable for women. That's why I wanted to talk to guys, because sometimes we see things the same and sometimes we see things differently, like you guys, I don't know. I mean, Justin talked a lot about time, but a lot of times with women, when you start talking about women who want to get married, they start getting even bitter. You hear women who talk about they went through a season of being bitter towards God because they've been faithful to the Lord, they love the Lord, and they want to have families, and they're getting older,
Mhm.
and I don't know if dudes think like that. I don't know if you think, well, I'm getting too old to.
There's definitely been some time as far as like wondering, as far as, feeling the hurt and feeling the pain of being single during the season of the waiting. It's not all sunshines and roses and stuff like that, and especially, you talk about, the stuff like that. There's been times for the past few years, like, even when it comes to like Christmas time, that's one of my favorite holidays is Christmas. And so you see everybody, with their families and with their significant others and stuff like that. And you see them, taking pictures and everybody even, maybe even at the church taking pictures and stuff like that. And you're like, well, I guess another year of not having my picture taken with, because I live away from I live about an hour or so away from my family. So my family don't go to church where I'm at, when it comes to my mom and dad and stuff like that. But the deal of not having that wife with me, and even potential, kids, in that situation as well. Um, it just, it can be painful at sometimes, but then there's also, like I said, just the I guess timing is still a big deal, but it definitely comes with a lot of pain, but there's also, in with that pain, there's also a lot of healing and stuff too, because, when we lean on Christ, that it's really been a lot of my help. And I have to say, my church family has definitely been a part of that process of healing, and been a part of that process of being able to encourage.
Yeah.
And you've had some that's tried, they'll try to set you up and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
then you have, like, where they're ready to, hey, brother, won't you come on out to eat with us? Won't you come on out to fellowship with us? They've even had me out to their houses and stuff like that to make sure, hey, we want to make sure you're not feeling to
Yeah,
yourself,
your family. Yeah.
or your family. This dear, exactly. We love you, and so I mean, yeah, there's a different type of love there, but it's I, I have to say, God's placed me in a place where the healing process has been able to take place in that,
Yeah.
even though there has still been hurt there.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. One of the things is my heart for singles to know is that you're valued right where you are. It's not just about the next step. It's not about, just want to be married, or I'm missing out. Success is being where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. If you're single and you're supposed to be married, then there's misery there. If you're married and you aren't, you shouldn't be married at that point or whatever, there's misery there. It's about being in the will of God. And that's the message. So I guess for me, I never wanted to see singles ignored, but I also didn't want them to feel like they just had to get married. It's, where are you now? Where does God have you now? Isn't this good? I love this. And I hope you're loving it also. I hope you love it so much you stay tuned for this next part, because it's about to go deeper. I'm actually going to show you this little tidbit. It's a mic drop moment from Gabe. And obviously you'll get to see the whole thing in context, but I do want you to see a little bit of what you have to look forward to. Check this out.
I feel like now, like maybe then it was like the women wanted to know that the guy could do it. And now it's like, it feels like a lot of times they drop the stick to show you that they can catch it. Actually, like, I don't really need you as much as maybe in generations it has been showed that way. And so now it's almost kind of like I'm actually good without you. So show me why I need you.
That's
I
good.
need a handkerchief to wave because that is so good and that is so true. So there's just a little bit of a mic drop moment. You'll know what I'm talking about when you catch the whole thing in context, which I'm about to show you in just a moment. First, I want to remind you that I'm on Substack. My column is now at adrienneross.substack.com. adrienneross.substack.com. Check it out and all the subscription options that are there. You also want to go to thebmgnetwork.com and check out the other podcasts there. We are, as I say, engaging, enlightening, informative, and even entertaining. So check those other podcasters out at thebmgnetwork.com. And of course, please go to a major podcast platform and leave a rating and a review for the Adrienne Ross Show. But for now, it's time to get back into our conversation with the gentleman. I shared with you guys a clip of Juanita Bynum, and she was speaking about marriage and a message back in the 90s that was like the message heard around the world. Every church, every singles ministry, it was just all over. It was called No More Sheets, a powerful message.
The eagle, when she chooses her mate, it blew my mind. The encyclopedia says she goes to the ground and she gets a stick and she flies high on top of a branch, and the male eagle just flying behind. And she drops the branch out the tree, and it's his job to fly and catch the branch before it hit the ground. So he caught the first little twig. She said, all right, let me go get another one. This time, she gets the branch about the weight of what a baby eagle would be, because she want to see that if a baby eagle ever fall, can you catch it? She drops it out the tree, and here we go, he catches. She said, all right, you did real good. But then she goes and get a branch her same weight, and she drops it. But this time she fly high in the sky. She said, now if you can catch this, then I know if anything ever to happen to me, you can catch me. And she drops the branch. About y'all, but I don't want nobody that can't catch me in the spirit. I don't want nobody that can't catch me in prayer, that can't catch me in my spirit, that can't sense when something is wrong. I need an eagle-like spirit that's got the power to intercede for me, to consecrate for me, to fast.
Thoughts?
Wow. That kind of leads me to where I was at earlier, when I made the statement earlier about, bringing something to the relationship. What do we as a Christian, a follower of Christ, bring into that relationship to be able to support the mate, the one that's, entrusted to us. We're told in Scripture to love that bride, love that mate as Christ loved the church, and to be there, and to be that strength. But it's also a covenant, right? I mean, there is as we are to bring ourselves into the relationship in a healthy manner and be there and support. We also need someone who can also come to that relationship with something to contribute in there as well. Because let's face it, neither one of us are strong all the time, every time, right?
Yeah.
And so there are times that it takes both of us, because one has to complement the other. One has to help hold the other up. It's a relationship that's based on exactly the helpmate idea, that it's there to help each other and to keep each other in that place, to to be supportive of each other.
Yeah, that's good.
Again, I second what Martin just said too. Just spiritually, I mean, they got to love Jesus more than they love me, and I mean that's key right there. I mean, and then just to, it's not a 50-50 game anymore. It's because sometimes your mate's going to have to help you more, and you're going to have to help them more. It's none of those, you know. But I mean, the spirituality thing has got to be key. And again, you can't move without God hearing his voice on this, period.
Yes, that's good.
I kind of want to, along with what they said in the marriage part, that is exactly what needs to happen. I want to kind of also come from a deal of seeking the helpmate when it comes to, as far as some of my experiences, not all, but some of my experiences, where I have I've been there where I've talked to, or I've tried to the dating scene and stuff like that. And I remember watching one of the last ones where you guys was talking about even the dating apps and stuff like that. And I've been on those, and I've done that, and then you get also in certain times where you think a relationship is starting, and then how in that video where she talks about the woman takes the stick, or the lady eagle takes the stick and drops it, and the male flies down. But I've been in it where it's been to the point where feels like the stick has been dropped so many times, and you've done everything you could do to do that, and then you still get dropped. And so after a while, you just almost kind of get sick and tired of putting up the fight, and trying to go after another one, because it's like, well, if I put out this effort again, am I going to get dropped again? Because it's like there's no warning. It's a drop. There's no more talking. And then later on, you find out there was somebody else that, of course, and how you see it spiritually is not adding up to biblical standards. And so that's kind of a see-through on that one on my end on that.
Good. Anything there, Gabe, that jumped out at you?
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, regarding, she's kind of leaning heavily into the spiritual emphasis of like, when I'm down, I need to know that you're going to be able to hold me up, cover me in prayer, right? And like be there. And that I'm like 100% in. And like, I mean, obviously, like undeniable, that's a deal breaker. That's a no-brainer. I do think there are moments, even to the last point that was just made, where there are moments, especially, I don't know, it's interesting too to hear that clip. And you said that was from the 90s. It's interesting because I feel like in today, like, I've just slid into the millennial. I'm 94, so I fall right in this like little pocket where it's like, what is it, like Gen X and millennial, where I feel like now, like maybe then it was like the women wanted to know that the guy could do it. And now it's like, it feels like a lot of times they drop the stick to show you that they can catch it. Actually, like, I don't really need you as much as maybe in generations it has been showed that way. And so now it's almost kind of like I'm actually good without you. So show me why I need you. And that's like a whole nother, like, I don't know who's got the sermon on where the stick drop illustration comes in, like in that sense, like, because it's kind of like the rules have changed a little bit since that time, where that is so true still, spiritually speaking. Like, listen, same thing. Like, if I'm having a bad day and I need to drop the stick, like, I want to know that whoever that is going to be able, like Aaron with Moses, hold the arms up, right? And then when she's having a bad day, sign me up. Like, you're covered in prayer. I'm fasting for you, non-negotiable. And as it pertains to some of the practical, like, dating aspects, because like the idea of like people are getting married later in life and there's a greater sense of individuality and career, it seems as if the paradigm has kind of shifted to more of this, like, I actually don't need you to catch it because I can do that. So
I need a
it's kinda like
handkerchief
looking
to
at it
wave
through
it.
that lens.
That's
I
good.
need a handkerchief to wave because that is so good and that is so true. And I hear that women are like, I don't need anybody. I can get, I can do my own thing and all that other stuff. And so do you guys find that that's the case, or do you find women who are needy? Because that's the other end of the spectrum, right?
I second that. It was so good.
Yeah.
I found that out. I was born in the 60s, so it's like and ended out in the 2000 in the millennial side of it. But yeah, women do feel like they don't need us, and they're like, okay, come after me. How are you going to come after me? What do you got that I don't have already?
Wow.
Right.
And is that true? That's women in the church too?
I feel like it.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Wow.
yeah, maybe to some extent, like it's like maybe the average sum has kind of risen. Obviously, like a non-believer to a believer might vary, but I would say genuine, like if you're just looking back like 30 years versus 20 years versus like today, I do think that temperature has kind of risen because, even in society and like around the world, and these are good things. Like there is like a better sense of like, like, no, I do have value, right? And I do have, but I think one thing that maybe complicates that a little bit is like, it might be like the individual sense of value coming from like career or coming from like actually, or whatever that looks like, maybe more of a world's take on it versus like what like God's take of it. And so, and that's both that's guys and girls. That's not like a shot at women at all.
No.
But I do think as it pertains to dating, the paradigm shifts a little bit where they're like, no, actually, I'm good. Like I'm independent, I'm strong, and all those things are legitimate. But it does kind of put maybe a different twist on like, man, okay, I have to think about like proving that I bring something that they don't have.
Yeah.
In a way that like,
Is it a turn off, really?
I guess it depends on what kind of
she's got
guy.
it all together, so it seems.
I think it depends on the guy, to be honest, because some guys are like, great, pull your weight, like let's do this, like we're gonna do this, and other guys like, no, I need to save you, like I'm Prince Charming, you got to be stuck in the castle, you know what I mean? That's me. That may be wrong, but I think it depends. I really do. I mean, I think it requires a little bit of like awareness of like that seems to be the climate now. So you approach it different.
You got the wheels turning in my head. I can see Mark, he's like deep in thought. But I'm wondering, like, is that because you hear that a lot, and I don't know if race ever figures into it, but a lot of times when it deals with Black women, they'll talk about, I came from a strong, matriarchal family, and my mama and my grandma, they had it together. They didn't need anybody. And so, and you don't want to be needy, but you've got to survive as well. And so how does that figure? I mean, I've had people tell me that I come across as intimidating, and I don't see that. But Jerry, why are you smiling, Jerry? Do you agree with that?
If you're not intimidated, I know you. So you're very strong, very strong-willed, Yeah. I mean. All
right, now it's time to counsel me, guys, okay? Like, so do I come across as intimidating? Or like I don't need anybody?
No, I think you're really smart. Like,
yes.
Like you're smart. And a lot of guys would probably get nervous. They're like, am I smart enough? Like, can I handle that? You know what I mean? Like, and that's a compliment to, that's really more of an indictment on them, I think, than it would be on you personally. Personally.
Wow. That's deep. Mark, you got something?
Gabe, I'm going to tell you what, man, you caught me there. I'm like, wow, there is kind of a shift here in, what my generation is, where yours is, that's like, wow. I guess we probably ought to clear up real quick. Adrienne, you're not intimidating. Okay. No. But, you're an awesome lady. My first, introduction to Adrienne was, she spoke on a Wednesday night, preached at church on a Wednesday night. And when she finished, I felt this heavy responsibility, like I needed to go find a vacuum cleaner and like vacuum, because she had preached the paint off the walls of that place, but just brought it so powerfully and gracefully in that message that you shared. So lots of love and respect to you there, Adrienne.
Thank you.
I guess if we look at it in the biblical view, in Ephesians 5, maybe, it puts a lot of strong demands on a Christian male as a husband, which then trails into a father, and I don't think women are meant to be second. I want to make sure I say this right. It's spoken of, a weaker or vessel, but I don't think that women are meant to be second. However, the scripture does speak to the woman being at a point where they're willing to accept the lead of the right man, right? Someone who is fit to lead them. So the word speaks of the woman submitting to the lead of their husband if he's doing it right. First off, is big there. But submission, really, it's not meant to be intended as one side. It's a covenant relationship, right? A marriage covenant relationship.
Yeah.
That it's both submitting to the other. Mm-hmm. And in the right relationship, in that they're both moving in the same direction. It's giving God his rightful place in it, which means you're submitting unto him first and foremost. So in a generation where Gabe is speaking to, where there are those, and I guess I had a few flash through my mind there, where they are very self-motivated, self-driven, self-built, in the sense that they've, heavy career, leader in whatever career field that may be. It's still the role of then to become that wife is actually to come in to submission to the relationship first and foremost with God, and then with that helpmate, that partner that they've been brought together with.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I found though that a lot of women who might seem to be so strong and I mean single women who might seem like they're just maybe come across as bulls in a china shop or whatever. A lot of times it's because they've had to be that way, and but you talk to many of them, they don't want to lead. Like you look at them now and you're like, they're such leaders. And yet they'll tell you, I have to lead. When I get married, I don't want to have to lead, but right now I have to, like I seeing a guy, and my pastor back at home in New York, and he had said to me, he met the guy, talked to him, and he said, Adrienne, I got to tell you, I hadn't known him that long, but he said, I got to tell you that if you guys get together, he's a really great guy. He said, but if you get together, you're going to have to lead, because he's not ready to lead, spiritually, just wasn't there to lead. And I was like, I was already having, red flags, but I'm like, I'm not interested in leading.
Right.
So looking from I want to do my part, obviously, but I'm not interested in having to be the spiritual head of the house after I get married. I have to do that now. And so I think sometimes people come across that way because that's the situation they're in. But of course, that's the situation you guys see. But Gabe is also right. The culture has shifted. There's been a perversion of what God has intended. And there's a certain attitude that's within the culture that's kind of, you don't need a man. You don't need to respect a man. It's one thing. No, you don't need a man. You have the Lord, but there's a certain respect that you should have, that it seems nowadays the culture and certain political leanings, lead you toward. And I think that's sad, because I think everybody misses out in that situation, But it's interesting. What are we perception is reality. So it makes you think, well, what, I don't think I'm turning anybody off because I'm too strong-headed because I don't meet anybody. So, so there's that, right? Okay, so you heard what Juanita Bynum said that she was looking for. As we kind of wrap up here, what about you? I mean, what are your non-negotiables that you have? What is it that I mean, I know she's got, like you guys said, she's got to love the Lord and everything. That's a given. But is there something that you said, this is a non-negotiable, this has to be, or this is a deal breaker for the person the Lord has for me, or even for me to spend time getting to know? Or is it just saved? That's it?
No, I actually have a list.
Wow. You did say picky, right?
I did. And you know what? That's hilarious because that makes me sound like insane, but that's recent because we had a missionary come to the church, and he was telling us a story about how him and his wife met. They're born and raised in India, and they're over there now. And he was telling the story of how his wife, talking about like not finding the one or the perfect spouse or whatever, and how she had written 43 things down that she wanted in a husband.
Wow.
And she met him, and he had 42 of them. And the last one that he didn't have was that he didn't know how to cook. That was the last one. And over the course of them dating, he learned how to cook and became like the ideal whatever. So he was like, oh, you never know, you should write a list. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I went home, I started writing. So yeah, no, I mean, as far as those, and those aren't all non-negotiables, but I would say like one or two of the ones that are like huge for me, we've already like talked about, obviously loves the Lord, whatever. Right. And so all that, one thing that I'm like really, really passionate about is being able to admit areas of weakness and being able to, and be willing to work on the areas of weakness together.
Yes.
I've seen so many moments, like even in relationships just that I'm very close to, whether it be like aunts and uncles or mom and dad or anything, where like that one piece can ripple into so many things that are like so difficult to sort through, like the inability to say I'm sorry, the inability to say like I was wrong and I messed up. And not even like I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings when I did blank. It was like, no, I hurt your feelings when I did this. I didn't mean to do that. That wasn't my intention. And like, I know that. And next time I promise to try to be better and to do better. That's like a big one for me. Just being able to admit I messed that up. I fell short. And like, you know what, like with your help, like I want to work on that. Cause I've just seen that not be a thing. Like, and I think that really comes down to like humbling yourself, like willing to get low. Like if you need to. That one is most definitely 100% like a non-negotiable.
Now, are you dating now?
No, I'm not. There's like I'm in a new season of life where I just came to a brand new church, and so I'm sort of getting things settled, like rocking the lane, trying to make sure I'm, all things are figured out. But
that's good. Okay, good. Being willing to say you're sorry, that's huge. In every relationship, that's huge.
Yeah.
Anybody else have a non-negotiable or something that you're passionate about that's gotta be? I mean, beyond the Lord, obviously, you guys expressed that. That is. Those of you who are dating, you better say something that the person you're dating has. So, no?
I'm trying to figure out the wording on mine.
Yeah.
I guess you could say I've seen it where because I'm an evangelist, so I've got other evangelistic friends that I've seen some of their marriages, and I've seen where their wives have been very encouraging of their husbands in the ministry, not and like they said, not being behind, but being right beside them. because her strengths pour into me
Yeah.
and my strengths pour into her. And just the deal of being excited about the ministry, excited about the Lord, and other things as far as different things to do together on the outside of church too as well. But like to really to just be able to encourage each other in the Lord, and to keep pushing on towards Him, and that to kind of help keep me encouraged, and actually be showing that, hey, I love this man, and this is the man for me, I want to help push the ministry forward in our lives forward, building our lives in Christ. So
Good. Amen.
I'm sure there's more on my side, but that's all I can think of for right now anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. One of the things that Juanita Bynum mentions in that message is that one of the issues, she said, you hear people say at times the relationship didn't work out. And they say, we just grew apart. We just grew apart. And she says, no, you didn't grow apart. What you chose was somebody right now who could satisfy you, but they could not grow in the Holy Ghost to accommodate where you are going. That's why God has to choose. And I want to end with this conversation, because that's another source of debate. There are those who say specifically that there is one person for you that God has for you. And other people will say, and I'm hearing this a lot lately, other people will say, no, God doesn't choose for you. It's your choice. And as you guys are the guys, right? I mean, what do you think? Do you believe that there is a person that God has specifically, one person that God has specifically set apart for you? Or do you think that there's A, B, C, D, E, whatever, and you choose?
There's a scripture that kind of, and I hope I've got this correct, but I've heard it so many times where it says, and it seemed good to me and the Holy Ghost. And so I believe that there could be, it's just on the end of one person, but like I also have to understand, like, there's areas as far as relationships that I've been in where they chose not to. And sometimes it's not the deal. It's how was I going to word this? You can't force nobody's hand on anything.
Right.
And so like, it's just the deal of, does it seem good to me and the Holy Ghost? Is it a biblical foundation?
So does that mean that there's only one person that it should seem good to you and the Holy Ghost for to be together?
I'm going to say that when God points that person out, I don't know how to answer that one.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It's very tough.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've been there where I really thought that I had found the one.
Yeah.
And that one felt the same way, but then that one chose another path. And that's where I was going with the whole deal of, you can't force the hand.
Right.
I'll jump in on that one here in a minute. So I believe God has a perfect plan, right? It's what He had for Adam and Eve. It's what He had for man at the beginning. But He has given all of us this gift of free will.
Yes.
There you go.
We get to choose, right? And so, I believe He's got that, ordained plan, but it's just like He said, what happens when somebody chooses not to walk in that path or step? What is it when that one that was intended didn't turn out to be the one because of choices they made? He does not force us to do anything, right? I mean, we choose this day who you're going to serve, but that's also what makes our relationship, our a marriage so powerful, is because we choose the bride. It's the same as our relationship with Him. We choose to follow Him and serve Him. So yeah, it's absolutely a thing where, we can even mess that up. We chose to do something else other than, maybe what or who was intended, or we went in a different direction. So.
Okay. Anybody else on that?
Yeah. I mean, I would, to be honest, I feel like the idea of the one doesn't really come from scripture. I feel like that's a Hollywood thing. Like the word, like the one, I don't even know that you find that anywhere in the Bible regarding relationships, other than like Jesus being like, he's the one that came that they were talking about, that Isaiah was like, you know what I mean? Like, so I do really think that like we give ourselves it, at least in my mind, again, I'm open to being wrong. I'm open to saying I'm sorry. I'm open to saying all those things. But I do think we would give ourselves a little too much credit if we were like, man, if I pick the wrong one, God's plan is ruined. Like we kind of set ourselves up for that. And I do really think, I love Proverbs, how it puts it. It says, a man who finds a wife finds a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I love that, because it's not a man who finds the one finds a good thing.
Right.
It's like it, and there is like, there's kind of room for, at least in my head, like the Lord's gonna do what he always does, and uses everything in all times at all places for our good and his glory. And so I don't necessarily know that that I would say that the idea of the one could be like immediately outlined. I do think that that's definitely been a thing in society, like with every movie, and we're like, oh, he's the one, she's the one. And I do think that God can produce so much fruit like in many different cases, right? And so time is like a whole thing, like you could go into, but doesn't he know that already? Like, but
Right.
don't you know?
So
Which you could say that, but
so should we throw out the idea when we say, well, God's gonna bring the right one my way? All the people or the women who are saying now, like, there are no single guys around or whatever. So it's not God's responsibility then to bring the right one around? Or you know what I'm saying? Like, is that?
Yeah, I mean,
I guess there's some things we don't know the answer to, but the wheels go in my head.
It does. And I do think that, like, if our hyper focus, like in life, like if the last thing I think about when I wake up, and the first thing I think about, or last thing I think about when I go to bed, first thing I think about when I wake up is marriage and getting married,
Right.
then maybe my head would go to like, I gotta find the one, but like at the end of all of this, like we're not gonna get there, and God's gonna be like, how is your status of relationship? You know what I mean? As it pertains to like marriage. And so I think he will always do what he does and bring opportunities in moments of divine appointment, some that we'll be aware of, some that we might not. And maybe in many cases that could fall on us to be hearing him clearly and knowing like, oh, wait a minute, I think this is a moment here where maybe God is like connecting a piece together. And if for some reason it didn't play out how maybe the intent should have played out in that moment, I think he does what he always does, and he'll silver lining it, he'll make it good, and then he'll do this other thing that keeps his will moving. And I do think at that point, yes, absolutely. Like if he's throwing like 5 super eligible anything at you and you're missing it, he's probably like, oh my gosh, like you know what I mean? Like
I'm feeling it even right now. I'm so fascinated by all this, because there are some things, like I said, we just don't know, and it's so interesting to be able to bounce these things off of each other. But I have a feeling he's just sitting there, he's got his arms crossed, he's like, they all got a clue.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Jerry, did you want to add to that?
I'm kind of the same way all these guys are. I mean, I think I'm gonna still stick with my original from the beginning. I think God does have somebody chose for us, but again, we can miss that opportunity. He can send them our way and we don't see it, or we miss the boat from our actions, or they miss the boat from their actions.
Yes. Yeah. That's really good. That's excellent, guys. I really, really appreciate this. I appreciated talking to the ladies, and then I'm so glad that it was like, let's talk to these guys. Talking to the guys, and one of these days I'm gonna have some guys and some girls talking to each other at the same time, right? But I appreciate that, because a lot of these conversations are never had, and I think that sometimes you don't get an understanding even of what you believe until a question comes or until you open your mouth and speak and hear yourself start to say what you didn't even know you thought. You hadn't even thought it. You didn't even know to think it before.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate you guys, your transparency, your time. And also I had my good friend, I had asked her husband, who's also a good friend, I said, I'm thinking about having these guys. And I was like, what, will a guy really talk to a woman about, the singleness? And he just said, look, a guy is going to talk as much as he wants to talk, no matter who's talking to him. He's not going to say any more than he wants to say. It doesn't matter who's talking. So you can just go for it. But I really, really appreciate it. And I appreciate, before we came on, Mark prayed, because we do want everything that we do and we say to be a blessing and to build up, and I appreciate the wisdom you guys dropped and the experience that you have. And, it'll be interesting to see how your lives go and the marriages to unfold. And in the meantime, just you soaring in the will of God for your lives,
Amen. Amen.
Any final comments before I let you go? Because I kept you so long.
Thanks for having us.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you. All right. So thank you so much, guys. And I'll catch you another time, maybe.
You bet.
All right.
Good to meet everybody.
All right.
Everybody have a good night. Be blessed.
Well, that was quite the conversation. I really appreciate the guys sharing their hearts with us on the Adrienne Ross Show. So I'm very, very thankful to Mark and to Gabe and to Justin and to Jerry and to all of you for tuning in. We have to hear from other people. And on this area of singleness, I think it's such an important topic. And so that's why I talk about it every once in a while. But I'm especially thrilled that I had an opportunity to not only talk to women about it, but now to have talked to some men. And like I told them, maybe I'll get the guys and the ladies together at some point to talk together and to ask each other questions and all that good stuff. So thank you so much for tuning into the Adrienne Ross Show. And hey, I need you to go to adrienneross.substack.com, adrienneross.substack.com, so that you can subscribe for that platform, for my column, for the podcast, for various things that I can do there. It's so much better than adriennerosscolumn.com, which is where my column was before. In this case, with Substack, you actually get everything on one platform, and you get the columns and the podcast directly to your email. There's an app for Substack, and also at adriennerossubstack.com. And so it is absolutely simple, easy, convenient, and obviously good material and good content. So check it out, adrienneross.substack.com. I'd appreciate it. Also, would you please leave me a rating and a review on the major podcast platforms? That would be much appreciated. So I will catch you next time on the Adrienne Ross Show. God bless you. Over.